Put on your walking shoes, lace up your boots, or slip on your sandals. This episode is all about footwear. We'll explore lots of vocabulary for different shoe styles, from sneakers to stilettos, so that you can boost your English skills one step at a time. Welcome to
Aprender Inglés with Reza and Craig.
Hello and welcome to the podcast, especially if you're a new first-time listener. My name's Craig.
And my name's Reza.
And with more than 50 years of teaching between us, we'll help you improve your English and take it to the next level. How are you, mate? Let's start off on the right foot. How are you doing?
Fine, thanks, fine. I have just got here, as you know. I had a little walk between one bus and another. I had a connection. And I was very glad that I was wearing comfortable shoes for that walk. Boy, does it make your life pleasant to wear comfortable shoes, doesn't it?
I think that's one thing of many that we agree on. If you're not in your bed, you're probably in your shoes. So it's good to have a good bed and a nice pair of shoes. What do you think? They're very important, aren't they?
Yeah, and what's more, as the cowboys say, you don't want to die in bed with your boots on, do you?
No, you
don't want to mix the two.
You don't want to die with your boots on. So today we're looking at vocabulary connected to shoes. Let's start with shoes and shoelaces. Reza, what are shoelaces and what do we need them for?
Well, laces, that's L-A-C-E-S, laces, or singular lace, but they normally come in pairs because we got 2 feet, right? Shoelaces are those little strings, let's say. Yeah, they're strings, they're long things which you use to tie, T-I-E, to tie. Or you can say, with the phrasal verb, to do up. So you do up your shoelaces. You tie them. That means you put the 2 ends together and you tie them. You make a knot. And I'm not being negative. When I say make a knot, I mean K-N-O-T. You make a knot. That's when you tie the 2 ends of a lace or a piece of string or a rope or something similar together to help keep your shoes on so that they're nice and tight. So shoelaces mean that your shoes don't fall off when you walk around. It's as simple as that.
Very important. Now, at the back of your shoes, you have the heel, H-E-E-L, the heel. And at the front of your shoes, where your toe is, you have the toe of the shoe. So heel and toe, back and front. And under the shoe, that's the sole, S-O-L-E, the sole of the shoe. That could also be a fish, can't it? Sole is the name of a fish in English.
Oh, that's right. What is it? Lenguado? I think it's
lenguado in Spanish.
One of my favorite fish, actually.
Very nice.
Now, as well as the sole, the bit at the bottom on the exterior part of the shoe, there's also a very important part, particularly for someone like me, I'll explain later why, which is the insole. So add the prefix in, insole, and as you can probably guess, it's kind of like the sole, but it's inside. That's why it's the insole. So the sole is exterior, it's in contact with the ground, but the insole is that bit inside the shoe where your foot rests. And for me, because I have very, very...
smelly?
Well, I do have smelly feet, that's true. But my problem is I've got a little bit of arthritis in my feet, in my toes. So for me, it's incredibly important that I have comfortable shoes, and insoles are a big thing for me. In fact, I even have my own personal insoles. I think a lot of people do these days. They were specially made for me.
Oh, really?
Insoles, which I can put in any shoes where they'll fit so that it's already adapted to the shape of my feet. So for me, insoles are really important.
Another important thing when you're buying shoes is to get the right size. So obviously sizes are different from country to country. In the UK, I take a size 8. Notice the use of the verb to take there. I take an 8, which is a 42 in Europe. So I take size 8 or 42. What size do you take?
I'm a bit unlucky, I think. I fall between...
Hopefully you don't fall. If you're falling, you've got the wrong shoes on.
I've definitely got the wrong shoes. I've got to sort that out. I fall between two sizes. Let me explain. Craig says he takes an 8, right? Which is 42 in Spanish or European sizes. In the UK, I've always been an 8.5. That's right. We have half sizes in the UK. Yep. 8, 8.5, 9, 9.5. So I've always been an 8.5. Here's the thing. In Europe, 8.5 is 43. So what's 9? 9 is also 43. So in the UK, there's kind of like something in the middle which doesn't quite exist in Spain. In Spain, it would be a small 43, not a big 43. That's me. I know it sounds bizarre, but yes, 8.5 is 43, and 9 is also 43. Then finally, 44 arrives when you go up to 9.5.
Confusing.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that I have difficulty with is how wide the shoe is, because I have wide feet and I need a wide fitting shoe. So wide is the adjective, wide shoes, and the noun is width, width. The width is very important. And when I try shoes on, notice another phrasal verb there, to try on shoes, to test them, to see if they're the right size. When I try on shoes, usually I need a wide fitting. So the width is very important.
Now, Craig, hopefully you have a tongue in your mouth. But is there anywhere else in your body where you might expect to find a tongue?
Yes, shoes have a tongue. That piece under the shoelaces that you need to open to put the shoes on. So it looks a little bit like a tongue. It's at the top of the shoe and we call it a tongue. And actually last week I went to buy a pair of shoes and of course they were too tight because they weren't wide enough. And I said to the assistant in the shop, I'm sorry, these shoes are too tight. They don't fit me. And he said, try it with the tongue out. And I said, they still don't fit me.
That was so bad, it's good.
Thank you. Moving on, I think we should. Let's look at different types of shoes. The first one on the list here, and remember you can see this vocabulary if you go to the website, inglespodcast.com/531. What are sneakers and trainers, Reza?
Now, I would never say sneakers myself, and I imagine you wouldn't either. Or you might, I don't know.
Probably not. Probably not. Trainers, yeah.
Exactly. Sneakers and trainers are the same thing. So one is American, sneakers, and the other is British, trainers. Or you might even say training shoes. And it means those comfortable, casual shoes that are often used for sports, but they're almost equally as used for just casual, everyday wear. In fact, I would say that about half the people you find on the street are probably wearing sneakers these days.
Yeah, and they are my favorite type of footwear. Footwear is a general term describing anything you wear on your feet. Footwear. And I really like wearing trainers. They're really comfortable. I can walk a long way in trainers. They tend to be wide fitting for my wide feet. So that's my go-to shoe. If I want to be comfortable, then I'll wear a pair of trainers.
So Craig, you like trainers like me. You like being comfortable. I imagine high heels, or you can just say heels, are not your thing.
No, they're very uncomfortable. I often fall over when I'm wearing high heels.
I can imagine that, although I'm trying not to. Imagine Craig in high heels. So high heels are usually, but not exclusively, worn by women. They're shoes with a raised heel at the back. So women might wear them quite often for formal occasions, but they can be worn informally as well. But for most formal occasions, most women tend to wear high heels, don't they?
They do. And one specific type of high-heeled shoes are stilettos. I think that word is Italian. Ladies' shoes that have a high heel are called stilettos, a very narrow, pointy heel, which I think is rather sexy. I like stilettos.
Yes, if worn with the right combination of clothes, it's a very elegant look, isn't it? Although, how on earth do women walk in stilettos? How do they do it?
I don't know, but they're not good for your feet, apparently. They're not very friendly to your feet. Let's take a quick break here because I know you listen to this podcast to take your English to the next level. But what about your speaking? Is your fluency improving? Are you happy with your speaking skills? My conversation course focuses on making you a more confident and more fluent English speaker. You'll join me and a small group of motivated students, and we'll meet on Zoom and have topical discussions, role plays, debates, and presentations that will expand your vocabulary and help you express yourself effectively in English. So be proactive and take the first step towards becoming a confident and fluent English speaker. Send me an email today to craig@inglespodcast.com and I'll send you details of the next online conversation course. Thanks for listening. Now let's get back to the podcast. One word which is not so common as just saying a high-heeled shoe is the word pumps. Now, pumps, P-U-M-P-S, is, I think, mainly used in American English, and it describes women's shoes that have a low-cut front with usually a high heel. So again, formal shoes, you may hear that word, pumps, typically in American English, meaning high-heeled shoes.
Flats, or flat shoes, are shoes which you can guess, probably, have very thin or indeed no heels. So they're comfortable and they're easy to move around in. There's good ease of movement because they're flat. So they're the opposite of high heels.
Okay, we've looked at shoes. Let's move on to boots now. And a broad or wide definition of boots is that boots are sturdy footwear. We've mentioned footwear before, anything that's on your feet. And if something's sturdy, it's very strong, it's very reliable, and probably the opposite to high-heeled shoes. Boots cover your ankle and sometimes go high to the lower leg, even above the knee sometimes. And we use boots for different activities and different weather conditions. So let's look at some examples. What's the first one, Reza?
Well, as Craig already said, they can come up to your knee, so they could be knee-high boots. They could even be higher than the knee. Then they would be over-the-knee boots. And if they're really, really high, then they would be thigh-high boots. So boots come in many, many, many shapes and sizes. Some of them are very specific, for a specific use. For example, riding boots. Are riding boots above the knee? They would be under the knee, wouldn't they?
I think they're just under the knee. Just under the knee.
Because you need to have your knee flexible, but yet you need a little bit of protection just under your knee in case you fall off. So they would be just under the knee. So obviously they're boots for riding horses. Riding boots. Can you think of any others?
Yeah, any adjective before boots would describe its use. So, for example, if you're going hiking, you'd put on a pair of hiking boots. If you're playing football, you'd put on a pair of football boots. And if you're a cowboy, you might even wear cowboy boots, which are leather boots with a pointed toe, typically. And they go above the ankle. They're usually very embroidered, very colourful, very intricate patterns. They really do catch your attention, don't they? Cowboy boots. Sometimes they're made of leather, sometimes they're made of snakeskin.
You say if you're a cowboy, yes, for sure, but not necessarily. Plenty of people who aren't cowboys, who've never even ridden a horse, wear cowboy boots.
True.
I identify it a lot with perhaps a bit old style. I'm no spring chicken. I'm not young, but a certain era of rock stars would often wear cowboy boots.
And country and western singers?
Country and western singers almost obligatory because, they want to promote the cowboy look. So it's not only cowboys, I would say.
One thing that cowboy boots probably are, and that is waterproof, which means if you're in the rain or it's wet, the water does not go into the boot or shoe and into your socks. So waterproof boots are really important if you're going hiking, if you're outdoors, maybe if you're fishing. And a particular type of waterproof boots are called Wellington boots. Wellington, sometimes shortened to welly. So what are wellies? Wellies, as I said, a type of waterproof boot that are usually made from rubber or sometimes plastic. They go as far up as the knee and they keep your feet dry in very wet or muddy conditions. Very useful if you're gardening, if you're working in wet weather. They were originally made from leather and they were made popular by Arthur Wellesley, who was the first Duke of Wellington in the UK, and that's where the name comes from. Duke of Wellington, Wellington boots, or wellies.
At the other end of the spectrum, you've got sandals. They wouldn't be useful at all for keeping the rain out because sandals are partly open to the elements. For example, they might be open-toed shoes. Your toes might stick out. Not necessarily, but quite a lot of sandals are open-toed. But there will definitely be air which gets in at your feet. There'll be plenty of ventilation, whether they're open-toed or not. There'll be straps to open and close them, or perhaps buttons, or maybe even Velcro. That felt which sticks, one piece to another. So they're ideal for warm weather. Craig, is it okay to wear socks with sandals?
Is it okay to wear socks with sandals? In my personal opinion, yes. I'm sorry to say it. I know people out there are going, no, Craig, you can't wear socks with sandals. But I think you can. I mean, let's say, for example, as we are recording this, it's very hot here in Valencia, but we're inside and there's air conditioning. So obviously, if I had sandals on, my feet would get cold. But if I put socks on, my feet are not completely covered, but there is some protection there against the air conditioning. By the look on your face, Reza, you disagree.
No. I would have said no 10, 20 years ago. But I think these days, more and more people around the world are wearing socks with sandals. Not just British people.
Germans as well.
Germans and Dutch. But I've seen Spanish people. I've seen even young Spanish people wearing socks with sandals. It's kind of like a new trend, I think, in Spain.
And what do you think, if you're listening to this, what's your opinion? Socks with sandals, or is it a no-no, like pineapple on pizza? Let us know. We'll give you details at the end of this podcast and explain how you can contact us with your sandal opinion. Now, something very similar to sandals, more simple, I'd say, flip-flops. Flip-flops. That name flip-flop is really because of the sound they make when you wear them and you're walking to the beach, because flip-flops are very commonly worn on the beach so that you don't burn your feet on the sand. That's the noise they make. Flip-flop, flip-flop, flip-flop as you're walking to the beach. Very, very simple sandals with a kind of Y-shaped strap. Sometimes plastic, sometimes leather, that goes between your toes, between your big toe and your second toe. Flip-flops.
Not always a Y-shaped strap. You can get open-toed flip-flops as well.
With a band across.
Yeah, I prefer it with a band rather than the Y-shaped.
Yeah.
So flip-flops and socks, Craig. Have you ever seen that?
That's awkward, isn't it? Because if it does have that Y-shaped thing, it can't go between your toes. The sock is preventing it from going between your toes. Very awkward.
You say that. I've seen people attempt it.
Yeah.
I have. Young people. I've never seen older people doing it, but in Valencia, I have seen a lot of young people wearing socks with flip-flops. Particularly a year or two ago, it seems to be dying out, but there was an attempt to make it trendy. Thanks be to God that attempt failed and it seems to have died out. But I saw many people in the hipster area of Valencia trying to wear socks with sandals.
So as far as you're concerned, socks with sandals, okay. socks with flip-flops, not okay.
Not okay. The whole point of flip-flops is you want to ventilate as much as possible. If you don't want to ventilate that much, wear sandals. So if you're wearing flip-flops and then you're going to wear socks, that's the point. It's like kind of negating the whole point of them. So for me, flip-flops and socks is a complete no-no. I don't see any point to it whatsoever, but I do have time for sandals with socks. Yeah,
I think we're in agreement with that. Now, you probably know the word platform. There's a platform at the train station, isn't there? It's a bit higher. Platforms usually are above ground, they're lifted. And in a similar way, platform shoes go quite high. They have very thick soles and heels, or sometimes the sole is thicker than the heel or vice versa. So just imagine a very thick piece of plastic or leather at the bottom of the shoe that raises it on a kind of a platform. Platform shoes or boots.
I think the golden era of platforms was the early 70s.
Yeah.
Glam rock. Think of 1970s rock groups wearing outrageous clothes. There's a good chance they were wearing platforms.
Yeah, a group called Kiss was famous for wearing platform shoes as well.
That's right. Another type of shoe or footwear, which isn't so popular these days, is the clog. So clogs are ancient. They're shoes with a thick sole, often made out of wood. That's right, wood, a wooden sole, and an open back. That's a very important characteristic. The back is open. So the toe will usually be covered, but the back is open. I identify clogs above all with Holland. Is that a stereotype?
I think it's a stereotype, but it's also true because I know at Christmas they tend to put Christmas presents inside clogs, or there's some connection with clogs and Christmas in the Netherlands. So, yeah, I agree. It's definitely associated with that country.
Craig, I love a nice pair of slippers, as you know. What about you?
Yeah, me too. Slippers are important. Slippers are soft, comfortable shoes that you wear inside your house, that you wear indoors. And here's a secret that maybe Reza's not going to be happy I share, but when he comes here to record the podcast, he brings his slippers. He brings his slippers so that he's nice and comfortable. And it's important for him to wear his slippers. And oh, look at his little face there with his little comfortable slippers on. They're not Mickey Mouse slippers, but they are quite nice slippers that Reza's wearing at the moment.
I won't deny it. Right now, I have my slippers on, yeah. And in fact, when I was on the bus coming here, I also was wearing something very comfortable. I was wearing slip-on shoes. That was before I changed it to my slippers. So slippers are for wearing at home, but outdoors, you can wear another thing which has no laces, slip-on shoes or just slip-ons. They're called that because, like slippers, you can slip them on and off easily because they don't have any laces. So on the bus, I had my slip-on shoes on. And then I wanted to be even more comfortable in Craig's house, so then I put on my slippers.
The last word or words on our list of other footwear are plimsolls. And that word takes me back to being at school when we have gym class, PT, physical training. We went to the changing rooms, we put on our gym clothes and our plimsolls. What are plimsolls? They're shoes that have a canvas or material upper part and usually a rubber sole. Now, we mentioned the word pumps before, meaning high-heeled shoes for women. You may hear the word pumps used as a synonym of plimsolls. I remember my brother-in-law used to say that word a lot. I'm wearing my pumps, meaning his plimsolls, his soft canvas shoes. Are there any other words that are associated with this type of footwear, Reza?
Yes, I knew that obviously where I come from, we use a different word, which is gutties. So I did a bit of internet research and lo and behold, it's the same word in Scotland. Gutties. That doesn't surprise me because there's a lot of connections between.
I've never heard that word in my life.
Yeah. I grew up being told to put on my gutties for PE at school. Yeah. But there's another word in some other parts of Scotland. They say sannies. apparently. And it comes from sand shoes because apparently plimsolls, pumps, are ideal, or they were thought to be ideal for walking in sand. So sand shoes, sannies. And in Wales, just to complicate matters even more, they call them dappers or daps. So all of those words exist in the United Kingdom for plimsolls.
It's complicated, isn't it? Different parts of the world, different names for different types of shoes. Let's finish with some idioms connected to shoes and footwear. Sometimes I put myself in Reza's shoes and I imagine what it's like teaching children. So I don't literally wear Reza's shoes, I hypothetically put myself in his shoes, idiomatically. So I'm using that expression to imagine what it might be like to teach children on a regular basis. So to imagine how someone else feels in a different situation, you can say you're putting yourself in their shoes. Put yourself in my shoes. How do you think I feel?
So one thing is to put yourself in someone's shoes, but you can also simply be in someone's shoes. So that's without the verb put, that's with the verb be. If you are in someone's shoes, that means you are actually in the same situation as someone else. So Craig's expression to put yourself in someone's shoes was hypothetical. Imagine you're in someone else's situation. But if you actually are in someone's shoes, that means you really are in the same situation. It's not just hypothetical.
Reza, imagine this situation. You're teaching your class of students and there's a lady in the class who you criticize for her pronunciation and her grammar, and she really feels disillusioned and really feels bad. And then you decide to take up karate, or you go to the gym and you see that she is your karate instructor or she is your physical trainer. Well, you could say now the shoe is on the other foot. So now she is going to be your instructor. The situation has been reversed. The roles have been reversed. And that's the meaning of the expression, the shoe is on the other foot. Would you say the shoe is on the other foot or the boot is on the other foot? What do you prefer?
I would say the boot, but I know that most people say shoe.
I would say shoe.
I've heard both.
Yeah, I would say shoe. But shoe or boot being on the other foot idiomatically means the situation has now been reversed.
The expression to have big shoes to fill that doesn't mean that you have to wear a very big pair of shoes. No. It's idiomatic. We're talking about idioms. That's not the real meaning. It actually means to have to meet high expectations set by the previous person in a role. So imagine, for example, the boss at your company retires and everybody liked him or her very much. They did a very good job and they've chosen you to be the next boss. Now, this is a very serious company and they love their previous boss. Well, you really need to do a good job because you have big shoes to fill. The previous person did a really good job, so you're expected to do the same.
Imagine the vice president decides to run for office in the next election, just hypothetically, because the president has decided not to run in the next election. And to run in an election, if you've listened to our previous podcasts, you know means to apply to be president. Well, you could say that that vice president has big shoes to fill. They're moving up to a higher position and they need to really step up their game, you could say, be even better to fill the shoes of the person they're going to replace.
Craig, have you ever been really frightened? Have you ever been shaking in your boots?
I remember before I did a bungee jump years ago, I was shaking in my boots. I didn't want to jump. It was very high. I felt very nervous. I was shaking in my boots. It was a difficult thing to do, but eventually I found the courage to jump and do the bungee jump. What about you?
Yes, I did once shake in my boots when I thought an intruder had got into my house, but it was a cat. I think I've told this story before.
You told that story recently.
I was shaking in my boots. I was extremely frightened.
It's often used sarcastically, isn't it? For example, if your next door neighbour who's very small and doesn't look very strong knocks at your door and says, "Turn that music down, I can't sleep." So, "Oh, I'm shaking in my boots. So if you don't turn the music off, I'm going to hit you. I'm shaking in my boots." So it's often used sarcastically in that respect to say that you're not scared. You're not really shaking in your boots.
Craig, as a child, were you badly behaved or were you a goody two-shoes?
I was terribly behaved. I was very mischievous. I got up to all sorts of things, which means I did things I should not have done. I was definitely not a goody two-shoes. What about you?
I was not either, no. So a goody two-shoes, which is not a good description of Craig or me as kids. A goody two-shoes is an overly and excessively good or virtuous person. You know, the sort of person who at school always answers the questions and says, "Oh, teacher, I know, ask me, oh, I'll help you, blah, blah, blah." The kid that the other ones don't like because they're a goody two-shoes. They're too good.
Remember, you can see all of these idioms and the explanations and definitions over at inglespodcast.com/531.
Craig, were you ever told by your parents when you were a badly behaved kid, as you've already confessed, to pull yourself up by your bootstraps?
I was, yes, many times. When I was lazy and apathetic and not working hard, I was told to pull myself up by my bootstraps. That word bootstraps, a strap is a piece of, in this case, leather or material that reinforces or holds the boot in a particular position or makes it stronger or tighter. So if you pull yourself up by your bootstraps, then you improve your situation because you're making an effort. And this is very common in business. You hear about people bootstrapping a business, which means not taking outside investment. They do all the work themselves. They invest their time, also their money, in building the business at a very basic level. So they are bootstrapping the business. They are doing it all themselves.
Craig, I was once given the boot for not doing my job very well.
Doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, I won't surprise most listeners. I was selling der Tagesspiegel newspaper in Berlin and I wasn't selling enough. I wasn't a good seller. So Herr Fischer gave me the boot. He said, "Yeah, kaput. No more job for you. You go home now." So I was
he Chinese? Was he Chinese?
He was Chinese. In very bad English, I was given the boot. It was it was extra embarrassing because I had to ask him to explain a few times. What I just said to you is an improved version of his English. It was actually much worse. So about 10 times he basically said, "I'm sacking you. You're losing your job." Yeah. But I couldn't understand. He's like, "Oh, what? Oh, come at 5 o'clock tomorrow." No. He's kaput. Go. I was like, "Oh, you're going to pay me more now." And then after the 4th time, he's like, go. I was like, "You're giving me the boot, aren't you?" Yeah, I got it. So it was an embarrassing way to be sacked that I had to ask 5 times what he really meant.
Yeah, sometimes using the passive as well. You can say, "I was given the boot." Someone gave me the boot. My boss gave me the boot, or I was given the boot, which means to lose your job. In formal slang, you've got the sack. You're not working there anymore. And now we're going to put the shoe on the other foot because it's your turn to practice your English. We would like to hear from you. Why don't you send us a voice message? Reza, how can people do that?
You could leave an audio message at speakpipe.com/inglespodcast. You'll see a link in the show notes. Or if you prefer to write, send an email to craig@inglespodcast.com or belfastreza@gmail.com.
So whether you prefer socks with sandals or sandals without socks, we'd like to hear your opinion. Practice the vocabulary in this episode and also give us your ideas for future podcast topics. If you're a Spanish speaker and you're interested in paid courses and audios for self-study, why not check out the online store at store.mansioningles.net.
As always, we'd like to give a big thank you to all our Patreon supporters. And what people do in the Patreon program is donate as little as $1.50 per month. And as a way of saying thank you for their donation, they get instant access to the audio transcriptions of the podcast. There's a link in the show notes if you're interested in becoming a Patreon sponsor. We'd like to thank every single person by name, but we don't have time. So what we do at the end of each episode is simply to say thank you to our most recent sponsors who've joined us this month. Who are they, Craig?
They are Jessica Nagria, Ronaldo Nino, and Walter Zange. Thank you to you and to everybody who is supporting us on Patreon. In next week's episode, we're going to give you a history of philosophy in 30 minutes. I'm sure you're thinking, well, I'm pleased I'm not in Craig and Rez's shoes for that, because how can you describe the history of philosophy in only 30 minutes? Well, you have to listen next week to find out. Until then, have a fantastic week. Keep walking in comfortable shoes. Until next time, it's goodbye from me.
And it's bye-bye from me.
The music in this podcast is by Pitts. The track is called See You Later.